Welcome everyone to Practical Tools for Emotional Intelligence on this great day of World Emotional Intelligence Day, pioneered a lot by partners all over the world. So it's great to be part of one of the first times emotional intelligence is having a day of celebration to acknowledge its great impact. And all over the world, somewhere, somebody is doing something about emotional intelligence. And I'm glad that I can be part of this journey. So thank you all. We have so many people signing up from different parts of the world. When you come in, you can tell us where you're signing in from. But we want to make this as quick as we can to see how we can do this under the hour. So if you have your notes, there's gonna be lots of information. I'm like gonna just be pouring them out. So take down notes. But towards the end, we'll also have time for questions. So I'm going to proceed right away. And again, just want to acknowledge today, June 6, 2024, as World Emotional Intelligence Day. And 6 seconds has been a great inspiration behind this day. So I want to acknowledge them. The 6 Seconds Network, they and Joshua Friedman, the CEO, have really promoted emotional intelligence with the goal of having 1 billion persons go through emotional intelligence in the past decade. So it's been really phenomenal. I also want to acknowledge our partners, Experience Shape, where we shape outcomes and move from saboteurs into profitable productivity. And of course, a round of applause to EQ to Homes, making its debut in the scheme of things, where together we can take emotional intelligence to orphanages and to inner city schools, first in Africa, then maybe the rest of the world. So welcome again, everyone. Good to see you all. So I'm going to dive into what our agenda would look like. We're going to have a brief introduction of emotions, and we're going to be able to look at emotional intelligence and maybe debunk some of the myths around emotions. We can't do all of them, but at least one or two we'll try to cover. Also, for today, we will look at just key tools. Two tools. We're going to look at the raft and we're going to look at the mood meter, summarize it, take questions, and then bring in Mr. Chimeze to give us closing remarks. So I want to encourage you to, if you have questions, to write them down, keep them somewhere where we can refer to them later, and then we can highlight them when we require. So we're going to jump in straight away. So I want to begin by telling a story I learned recently on one of the apps. It's about a little boy who basically went with his father to the zoo, and his father took him to the lion, expecting the boy to be thrilled about the lion. And the boy was bored and said instead he wanted to go to where the monkeys were. And this was very surprising for the father because he knew clearly that the boy hated, not just hated, was afraid of monkeys. But the boy insisted that he wanted to go to the part of the zoo where the monkeys were, which was a distance away. So he said, "Are you going to go there? It's quite far." He was willing to go to the distance. And he said, "Okay, let's go." But not just let's go, he decided to run. That was now even more shocking because he doesn't like running. Not just run, he asked his father to run faster with him. Faster? That was more confusing. And so he was wondering what is really going on. And his son was running, not just walking, running, but going faster to go meet the same monkeys he's afraid of. And then he told him, "Well, Daddy, I'm not really after the monkeys. I'm after the ice cream stand that is beside the monkey stand." So this is what we call, where you trace emotions and you see how emotions shift, from being indifferent and bored. You see the emotions shifted from, bored, fear, anxiety, the test and hate, and you see excitement and joy. Now, this is an emotion shift. And what we hope to achieve with practical tools is just one thing. We want to show you that you can shift your emotions. Okay? You can shift your emotions. Just remember that. That's what I'm hoping every tool can help you to achieve today. This particular example I gave on the screen is called EQ Motivation Ritual. It's a very unique technique. Maybe next month, I will go into it in details. But basically, if you look carefully, you list out what you want as a joy at the end and begin it with all the obstacles. If if it was just the monkey or the running, he wouldn't have done it. But by putting the reward at the end, then putting the reward at the end becomes a motivation to run, a motivation to conquer his fear, a motivation to tackle his boredom because of what is at the end. Who for the joy that was set above him, scripture says Jesus endured the cross so he could get down to the joy that was way ahead of him. So this may be obstacles for the boy, but the excitement of the ice cream, it was worth it. So if you use that principle sometime going forward, you may be able to find out how you can move from one emotional state to the other, depending on what celebration or rewards that you put at the end. It's called a motivational ritual. And hopefully we can use it to knock in what we're trying to achieve today. On the basis of that, I just want to introduce you to this concept of emotional intelligence. Many of us are at different stages of learning with emotional intelligence, but I simply like to define emotional intelligence as take emotional intelligence, strip it into two. It's emotions plus intelligence. And is huge. I could stay there for hours because it means that you have to realize that emotions themselves are neutral. Emotions and neutral. You're going to have a lot of people talk about negative emotions, positive emotions, bad emotions, good emotions. But in the strict sense of emerging research, emotions are actually neutral. That's one of the first things I want to debunk here. Technically speaking, there's no good emotion or bad emotion, but the use of the emotion will make it good or bad. And someday we can debunk that in details. But for today's lesson, just know that we want to bring intelligence to the emotions. Basically, we want to add intelligence to how you have been interpreting your emotions. You will likely have been interpreting your emotions from different domains of your life. There are three basic domains you've been using to interpret your emotions. Number one is childhood, okay, where you sucked in energy around your space. Number two is everywhere where you have utilized or connected to love is the second place where you would have gotten a message or interpretation of your message, of your emotions. And the third place is everywhere you have used your gift or talent. Okay, if you look at these three things, that's where we spend 80% of our time. And in those three domains, we have interpreted our emotions in those spaces. And rightly or wrongly, those emotional interpretations are governing our current performances. So if we move from there, then you will realize that if we actually go and add a proper dose of intelligence to that previous information you've had, then that will become emotional intelligence. Because for many of us, we will need to unlearn the label we placed on it so we can put a new label on it. Okay, the way I normally like to explain it is go to the supermarket. And when you go to the supermarket, you would see that there's a label of the expiration date on a product. And if it has expired, somebody needs to come remove the old label and put a new label. And then that defines whether it should be bought or not. Many of us have products or goods in our arsenal that has long expired, no longer serving us, but we have not gone to remove the validity label and put on a new expired label and gone perhaps to buy something else. So emotional intelligence is unlearning, relearning to add the right intelligence to interpret your emotions. The way the literature actually puts it, especially with the great work 6 Seconds has done, is that there are actually 8 competencies that we can use to measure or improve our emotional intelligence, 8 of them. And as you build on each of these, by adding these specific competencies, it really helps you to interpret the message in your emotion. And if you look at how much time we spend in either love relationships, either receiving love or rejecting love, or with the time we spend in where we exchange our talents and our gifting, or the time we spent in childhood, you will see, like I earlier said, that 80% of our time is dominated around emotions. So 6 Seconds rightfully says in their slogan that emotions drive people and people drive performance. So on a World Emotional Intelligence Day, we're saying you can't keep ignoring your emotions and just wishing they will go away and that they're not important, because the use or misuse of your emotions may actually determine close to 75% or more of your success factors. So it becomes so crucial that this is not something you hope will sort itself in the future. This is something you actually pay attention to, pick the actual skill responsible for it. So on the basis of that, I just want to stretch you and ask you some questions. Here's on the screen, you have words like emotions, feelings, thoughts, moods, judgment. In many literature, even academic literature, these words are interchanged. And my question is, do you know the difference between them? And I wish I could spend time to explain each of them in details, but today I'm going to look more into emotions and feelings just to show the difference. And you can see in the arrow, a lot comes down to the story or the label you tell yourself. The story or the label you're telling yourself is what makes the difference between whether you're dealing with a feeling, a thought, a mood. Notice that the emotion has nothing to do with stories. Okay, and you're going to ask me why in a moment. And I'm going to jump in and quickly tell you that. In the research, emotions actually last in your body for just 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anything more than 6 seconds is most likely no longer an emotion, but now a feeling. Anything more than 6 seconds means that it has gone beyond subconscious level to now a conscious level. And there is a conscious labeling of what was the original signal that your body sent as an emotion to give it the meaning of your interpretation of the circumstance you're facing. And so your feeling is your interpretation of the external trigger or internal trigger based on the signal your body was giving to you. How did you interpret it? These internal stories is the reason why two people can have the same experience and have different outcomes. You can have the same ridiculous boss and have different experiences. You can have the same kind of difficult country or situation, and your story within or the intelligence you're bringing to it can literally determine or inspire or be helpful, or in some cases even become unhelpful. So let's give a practical example of this.